My name is Ilya. I'm 75, and exactly 40 years ago I made a mistake that taught me time doesn't flow, it chooses. Right now I'm going to show you the watch that stopped my fear of death. But first, a warning. If you watch until the end, you'll never hear a clock tick the same way again. For 40 years I repaired time in this workshop on Sedovaya Street, a narrow room crammed floor to ceiling with mechanisms from every era. Wall clocks with pendulums like old men's hearts, cuckoo clocks chirping over the memories of strangers, Swiss pocket watches with enamel dials hiding ballroom confessions. I knew every gear, every jewel bearing. I believed time was mathematics, precision, order. I was wrong. It began on a February evening when the bell above the door chimed at 3:17 p.m. I remember that time, not because it mattered then, but because later I'd return to it 1,000 times. A man in his 50s entered, thin with sunken cheeks and hands that couldn't stay still in his palms. He cradled something wrapped in velvet, the color of dried blood. "Are you Ilya Petrovich, the last watchmaker in town who works on antiques?" I nodded, setting down my loupe. In 40 years I'd grown used to strangeness. People brought me not just broken mechanisms, they brought fears, hopes, family curses wrapped in brass and steel. But in this man's eyes I read not legend. I read ice cold. Absolute zero certainty. "These are my grandfather's pocket watches," he whispered, unfolding the cloth. "They always stop exactly 24 hours before someone dies in our family." I smiled. An old tale. In every town there are stories, mirrors showing ghosts, rings bringing misfortune. Death predicting watches, classic folklore. "Look," he said, pointing to the inside of the lid. I picked up the watch, heavy yellow gold, the lid scarred by time scratches. The hand stood at 11.03, but inside ran names, carved in fine script. Anna, 1943, Mikhail, 1958, Ekaterina, 1979, Sergei, 1991, Victor, yesterday. "Victor was my brother," the man said. His voice didn't tremble. He'd already exhausted all emotion. "The watch stopped yesterday at 3:47 a.m. He died today at 3:47. Heart attack. Doctors said instanted. Like a switch flipped. I wanted to joke, to say coincidences are patterns for those who seek patterns. But something in his face stopped me. Not madness, not hysteria, cold, almost scientific statement of fact. "Fix them," he pleaded. "Not for us. For yourself. You're the last person I'm bringing them to." "Why the last?" He looked at me for a long moment, then at the watch in my hands, then back at me, because I no longer want to be its keeper. He left, no goodbye, just walked out, leaving behind the smell of old wool and something else. I couldn't name it then. Later I understood it was the smell of relief. A man who'd just dropped a burden carried for decades. I was alone with the watch on its velvet cushion. Nonsense, I thought. Just a mechanism with a temperamental balance wheel. I took the loop and began to disassemble. First the lid, then the dial. Beneath it opened a mechanism that stole my breath. The balance spring wasn't steel. It was woven from human hair, finest threads braided into an impossibly complex spiral. Hair of different shades. Platinum, chestnut, gray, auburn, as if gathered from different heads across different eras. Inside the case, beneath the dial, I found a hidden compartment. So artfully concealed only someone who knew to look would find it. Inside lay a miniature hourglass the size of a fingernail. And the sand within wasn't sand, it was ash. Gray, fine ash, divided in half. The upper chamber nearly empty, the lower nearly full. I worked until sunset. The watch ticked evenly, hands moving smoothly. At 7 p.m. I tested its beat, held it to my ear. The ticking was pure, mathematically precise. Nonsense, I told myself. An old mechanism, old fears. At 3:47 a.m. I woke to sudden silence, not from sound, from its absence. In the workshop beyond my bedroom wall, clocks always ticked, dozens, hundreds of mechanisms. Their ticking was the soundtrack of my life. White noise of time. Now silence, absolute, tomb-like silence. I jumped up, rushed into the workshop. Every clock had stopped. Every single one. Hands frozen at different positions, but on my workbench, beneath the loop, the pocket watch stood at 3:47. I grabbed my phone. No messages. No news. Parents alive answered with sleepy voices from the nursing home. Brother on a business trip texted in Messenger. All good, sleep. Relief lasted 3 minutes. Then I remembered the man's words. They always stop exactly 24 hours before someone dies in the family. But I wasn't part of their family. I brought the watch close to the lamp. Through the loop, I studied the engraving inside the lid. Names, dates, and between the last entry, Victor, yesterday, and the edge of the lid. A barely visible scratch, fresh, as if made last night, or this morning. I ran my finger over the scratch. Beneath it emerged a barely visible letter, almost worn away, but recognizable. I. My name begins with I. 23 hours left. 1 hour, 40 minutes. I didn't sleep. I sat over the watch, tools spread across the table. Screwdrivers, tweezers, tiny hammers. I could break them, smash the mechanism to pieces, throw them in the river, burn them in the stove. But what if the man was wrong? What if the watch didn't predict death? It caused it. What if the stop wasn't a warning, but the mechanism's trigger? Then breaking them now might stop the countdown. Or perhaps interference would accelerate the process. Maybe the mechanism demands cycle completion, like a pendulum reaching its extreme point. I returned to the hairspring, carefully touched it with tweezers. The hairs were incredibly strong, despite their age, unbroken, untarnished. Each strand had its own shade, its own thickness. I counted 12 shades, 12 names on the lid, 12 deaths. They don't predict, I realized suddenly. They choose, and each time they choose, they add a new strand, new ash. The watch didn't read the future, it shaped it. The mechanism fed on death, and it always needed its next victim. The last owner knew this. That's why he brought the watch to me, not to repair, to pass on the curse. Breaking the watch would free its spirit, and it would find a new carrier. But if I didn't break it, if I waited for the countdown's end, I looked at the dial. 3:46. 2 minutes. My hands trembled. I grabbed the hammer, small bronze, for gear adjustment. One strike on the case, and the mechanism would turn to scrap metal. I'd be saved. But who would I pass these fragments to? A neighbor, a random passerby, the next watchmaker. This wasn't salvation, it was flight, transferring death onto someone else's shoulders. 3:46. I lowered the hammer, took the watch in my hands. They were warm, not from the lamp, from something else, as if a heart beat inside. What if I didn't run? What if I accepted the choice? Not as a victim, but as a decision. I'd spent my life measuring time, repairing its flow. Now time had come for me. Perhaps there was justice in that. Perhaps the watchmaker must be the final link in this chain. 3:46. 50. I opened the inner lid, took the engraving tool, fine stylus with diamond tip, and began to carve. Not my name, not the date. One word, enough. Letter by letter, Egan O.U. The final dot. As the second hand approached 12. 3:46. 58. 3:46. 59. I snapped the lid shut, pressed the watch to my chest, to my heart. 3:47. The hands trembled and moved forward. Tick, tick, tick. I waited for the blow, the cold, the darkness, my own heart stopping. Nothing happened. The watch ticked. Beyond the wall, one by one, the other workshop clocks revived. First the grandfather clocks, then wall clocks, then pocket watches on shelves. The ticking swelled, filling the room, the house, the street, an entire world of time reborn from dead silence. I opened the watch lid. The ash in the miniature hourglass had vanished. The hairs in the spring had whitened, become fragile as spiderweb after rain. And on the inner lid, beneath my word enough, a new engraving emerged, fine, barely visible, as if etched by time itself. Ilya, February 14, 2026. Choice. I placed the watch on the table. It kept ticking, but now its ticking sounded different, not as a countdown, but as breathing. Slow, deep, free. 40 years have passed since that morning. I still work in this workshop. I still repair time. Boys bring broken cuckoo clocks. Old women bring bracelet watches with photos of deceased husbands. Students bring Chinese alarms for 300 rubles. I repair them all, and every time, before handing back the fixed mechanism, I place my palm on the case for a second, just to feel the ticking. The pocket watch lies in the top drawer of my desk. Sometimes I take it out, wind it gently, without jerks. They run, they tick, they show time as accurately as any other mechanism in this room. I don't know if I broke the curse or became part of it. I don't know if I saved myself or accepted death under another name. Not physical death, but the kind that dies in a person when they stop being afraid. But I understood the main thing every person who hears ticking must know. The watch didn't show death. They showed time. And in that time, every moment was a choice. Even the last one. Especially the last one. Time isn't the enemy. It's a mirror. And what you see in it depends not on the hands, but on how you choose to live while they move.